When Lily was just 5 years old, her laughter echoed through every corner of the estate. She would chase butterflies through the gardens, embrace her mother, Evelyn, each morning at sunrise, and her voice, singing children's songs, was the most beautiful melody Edward had ever heard. Those days felt endless, filled with a light and a happiness that no one could have imagined would ever fade. But life has a cruel way of changing things. One November afternoon, a car accident took Evelyn, Lily's mother. Edward was shattered. Lily, barely 5 years old, couldn't understand why her mommy wasn't coming home. She asked every day. Each answer Edward tried to give caught in his throat. The months that followed were the darkest that the estate had ever seen. Edward retreated into his work, spending 15 hours at the office. He didn't know how to look at Lily without seeing Evelyn's eyes reflected back at him. The pain was too great, the guilt unbearable. He was the one who insisted Evelyn pick up that package. If he had just waited one more day, if he had sent someone else, if only. The what-ifs were destroying him. Meanwhile, Lily was growing increasingly alone. Nannies came and went. None lasted more than 2 months. Edward hired them, paid generous salaries, but he was never there to supervise, to see if his daughter was well cared for, to notice the subtle changes happening in the little girl who used to laugh all the time. It was then that Priscilla appeared. He met her at a business dinner. She was the assistant of one of his partners, 34 years old, elegant, sophisticated, with a smile that seemed to understand exactly what Edward needed to hear. She said the right words at the right time. She made him feel that the pain could end, that the loneliness didn't have to be permanent. Edward, vulnerable and desperate to feel something other than pain, fell in love. Or at least, he thought he did. 4 months after their first meeting, they were married. It was a small, intimate wedding. Only close family. Lily was the flower girl. She walked down the aisle in her pink dress, scattering petals, but her eyes didn't sparkle as they should. Edward didn't notice. He was too busy looking at Priscilla. What no one knew, what Edward could never have imagined, was that Priscilla didn't love him. Priscilla loved his money, loved the estate, loved the luxury cars, the unlimited credit cards, the first-class travel. She loved everything Edward could give her, everything except one thing: Lily. To Priscilla, that 6-year-old girl was an obstacle, a constant reminder that Edward had loved another woman before, a nuisance who demanded attention, who cried at night calling for her mommy, who looked at her with those big eyes, full of distrust. Priscilla hated that look, and when Priscilla hated something, she found a way to destroy it. It all started subtly, so subtly that no one noticed. Priscilla fired the last nanny that Lily had come to like. She told Edward that she had caught the employee stealing jewelry. It was a lie, but Edward believed her. He always believed her. In her place, Priscilla hired Brenda, a 28-year-old who happened to be a distant cousin of a friend of hers. Brenda understood perfectly what Priscilla expected of her: to watch Lily, keep her away from Edward, and report every move the little girl made. Lily began to change. The girl who once ran through the gardens now walked close to the walls, as if she wanted to become invisible. The girl who sang songs now barely spoke. And the girl who once slept peacefully all night now woke up screaming, soaked in sweat, calling for her mommy. The estate's employees noticed it, but no one said anything. In houses like that, one learns not to meddle in family affairs. The wealthy have their own rules and their own ways of handling things, and the employees who last are the ones who learn to see without looking, to listen without hearing, to work without asking. That's how they had all survived. That's how they planned to continue surviving. Until Carol arrived. Carol was 64 years old when she answered the job ad. They were looking for a housekeeper for general cleaning. 5 days a week, 8 to 5. The salary was good. better than she had earned in her last 3 jobs. And after the textile mill where she had worked for 15 years closed down, Carol needed the money. The interview was with Priscilla. Carol arrived on time, dressed in her best clothes, which wasn't much, but it was clean and ironed. Priscilla looked her up and down, assessing her as one assesses a piece of furniture. Carol was a black woman, with skin as dark as the moonless night. She was heavy-set, with wide hips and thick arms from years of hard work. Her hair was short, grey, close cropped to her skull. Her eyes, brown and deep, had that look of someone who has seen too much of life. Priscilla saw exactly what she wanted to see: an invisible woman, an employee that no one would notice, someone who would do her job, collect her paycheck, and not cause problems. Perfect. She hired her on the spot. What Priscilla didn't see, what she couldn't see because she had never learned to look beyond appearances, was that Carol was much more than just a cleaning lady. Carol had raised 4 children in a low-income neighborhood where water arrived twice a week and electricity was a luxury. She had worked since she was 11 years old, first selling candy on the street, then cleaning houses, then at the mill. She had buried a husband and a daughter. She had survived things that break most people. And at some point in that hard life, Carol had developed an instinct, a 6th sense for detecting when something was wrong, when someone was suffering in silence, when danger was hiding behind fake smiles. Her youngest daughter, Lucy, had died at 19. A violent boyfriend. Carol had noticed the signs too late, the bruises that Lucy explained away as accidents, the fear in her eyes when the phone rang, the way she jumped when someone raised their voice. Carol had sworn to herself that she would never ignore those signs again, never look the other way when a little girl was in danger, even if it wasn't her daughter, even if it wasn't her family, even if it was just a stranger. On her first day of work, Carol arrived at 7:45. She wanted to get to know the estate before she started. It was enormous, too big for a family of 3. Empty rooms that no one used, living rooms that looked like they belonged in a magazine but smelled of loneliness, an industrial kitchen where dinners were only prepared for 2, because the little girl, she was told, ate in her room. That was the first thing Carol noticed: a 6-year-old girl eating alone in her room. How very strange. The second thing she noticed was Lily. The little girl came down the stairs at 8:15, still in her pajamas. Brenda followed close behind. With that smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, Lily walked towards the kitchen without looking at anyone, her head down, her shoulders slumped, as if carrying an invisible weight. Carol greeted her. "Good morning, Princess," she said in her soft voice, the same one she used with her grandchildren. What a pretty bunny pajama set. Lily looked up for the first time, and Carol saw something that froze her blood. Empty eyes, and lifeless, dull. Eyes that did not belong to a 6-year-old girl. Eyes that had seen something that no child should ever see. Lily didn't respond to the greeting. She looked down again and continued walking towards the kitchen. Brenda gently nudged her from behind, as if hurrying her along. That was the second sign. The third came an hour later. Carol was cleaning the hallway on the 2nd floor when she heard a sound, soft, almost imperceptible. It was coming from Lily's room. She approached carefully, without making a sound. It was crying. Lily was sitting on the floor of her room, hugging an old teddy bear, crying silently. It wasn't a normal little girl's cry, with loud sobs and exaggerated tears. It was a contained cry, practiced, the cry of someone who has learned to cry without making a sound. Carol felt her heart break. She knew that cry. She'd heard it before. In the women's shelters where she'd volunteered, in the houses where she'd cleaned and seen things she shouldn't have. It was the cry of someone who's afraid of being heard. She wanted to go in. She wanted to hug that little girl and tell her that everything would be all right. But something stopped her. An instinct, an inner voice that told her she had to be careful, that she had to observe more before acting, because in houses like that, accusing without proof was the same as signing your own death warrant. Carol continued cleaning, but her eyes began to see, her ears began to hear, and her mind began to piece together the puzzle that no one else seemed to notice. During the following weeks, Carol observed. She observed how Lily tensed up every time she heard Priscilla's heels approaching, how her entire body became rigid, like a little animal sensing a predator nearby. She observed how Lily rejected the food that Priscilla prepared for her. Not all the food, just the food that came from her stepmother's hands, and when the cook prepared something, Lily ate without a problem. But if Priscilla offered her a plate, Lily looked at it with terror. She observed how Brenda was always there, watching, blocking. Every time Carol tried to approach Lily, Brenda appeared out of nowhere, with some excuse to take the girl away, and she observed how Edward saw none of this. Edward left at 7 in the morning and returned at 9 at night, sometimes later. On weekends, Priscilla convinced him to go to some party, some social event, some last-minute trip. There was always something. There was always a reason to keep him away from his daughter. And when Edward was home, Priscilla transformed. She became the perfect wife, the loving stepmother. She spoke to Lily sweetly, stroked her hair, asked her about her day. All acted, all fake. But Edward, blinded by his own need to believe that he had made the right decision, didn't see the lie. Carol saw it. She saw how Priscilla's eyes turned cold when Edward wasn't looking. She saw the smile that disappeared the moment he turned away. She saw the hands that stroked Lily's hair too hard, pulling subtly, causing pain without leaving marks. And she saw the terror in Lily's eyes, that silent, deep terror that no child should know. A month after starting to work at the estate, Carol found something that made her make a decision. She was emptying the trash cans in the rooms, as she did every Thursday. When she got to Lily's room, she noticed something at the bottom of the can, crumpled papers, drawings. She took them out carefully, one by one. The first was a drawing of a house, a big house with many windows. But all the windows were painted black, and at the door there was a figure in a red dress, and huge eyes, also red, like those of a monster. The second drawing was of a little girl. She was alone, in a corner, painted all grey. She had no mouth, only eyes, big and sad, with blue tears falling. The third was the worst. It was a drawing of a hand, a big hand, with nails painted red, and below the hand, a word written in the trembling handwriting of a 6-year-old girl. Silence. Carol looked at that drawing for several minutes. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was beating so hard, she could hear it in her ears. She knew these drawings. She'd seen them in documentaries about child abuse. She'd seen them on posters at the shelters where she'd worked. They were the signs, the evidence that adults ignore because it's easier not to see. She put the drawings in her bag. She hid them among her personal belongings. No one would look for them there. No one checked the cleaning lady's things. That night, in her small apartment, Carol looked at the drawings under the light of her lamp. She cried silently, like Lily cried. She cried for that little girl she didn't know, but already loved. She cried for Luciana, her daughter she couldn't save. She cried for all the girls who suffer in silence, while the world looks the other way. And then, she made a decision. She was going to discover the truth. She was going to protect Lily, no matter the cost. But she had to be smart. She had to gather evidence. She had to find a way for Edward to see what was happening under his own roof, with his own daughter, while he looked the other way. It wouldn't be easy. Carol knew it. Priscilla was cunning. Brenda was her shadow. And Edward was so blind that he would probably defend his wife until the end. But Carol had survived worse things. She had faced violent men, abusive bosses, a system that treated her as if she were invisible. And she had won. Not always, but enough times to know that the battle wasn't lost. Until you stopped fighting. And Carol wasn't planning on stopping fighting. Not for this little girl. Not this time. The following weeks, Carol became a silent detective. She started arriving earlier, when Priscilla was still asleep. She cleaned the hallways near Lily's room, listening, always listening. One morning at 6:45, I overheard voices. It was Priscilla. She was on the phone in her room. The door was slightly ajar. "No, I can't take much more of this," Priscilla said in her real voice, the one she never used around Edward. "That brat is driving me insane. If she cries one more time when Edward's around, I swear." Carol didn't hear the rest. Brenda appeared in the hallway, and Carol had to pretend to be cleaning a non-existent stain on the wall, but she'd heard enough. Brat. That was the word Priscilla used to refer to Lily when Edward wasn't around. Carol started writing everything down in an old notebook. Dates, times, phrases, behaviors, everything she saw, everything she heard, every little detail that could serve as evidence. She noted that Lily trembled when Priscilla entered a room. She noted that Lily stopped eating when Priscilla stared at her. She noted that Lily had nightmares every night, nightmares that made her scream her mother's name, and she noted something that made her tremble with rage. One afternoon, while cleaning the upstairs bathroom, she overheard Lily talking to herself in her room. Carol crept closer to the door, which was slightly open. Lily was sitting on her bed, hugging a photo of her mother, and she was talking to it as if her mother could hear her. "Mommy, I miss you so much. Priscilla says if I tell Daddy anything, he'll send me away. She says nobody likes crybaby girls. That's why you left. Because I cried too much and you got tired of me." Carol had to cover her mouth to stifle a sob. Priscilla had told a 6-year-old girl that her mother had died because she cried too much. She'd made her believe it was her fault, that it was a punishment. That wasn't just mistreatment. It was psychological torture. It was destroying a little girl's soul, piece by piece. Carol felt something she hadn't felt in many years, a cold, calculated rage. That didn't blind her, but made her think with even greater clarity. A steely determination that told her exactly what she had to do. She was going to destroy Priscilla. She was going to expose her. She was going to make her pay for every tear Lily had shed. But first, she needed proof that no one could deny. The opportunity came 2 weeks later. It was a Friday afternoon. Priscilla had gone to a spa with her friends, as she did every Friday. Brenda had asked for permission to go to the bank. Edward was at work as usual. For the first time since Carol had started working at the estate, Lily was alone. Carol went upstairs with her cleaning cart. She walked to Lily's room and gently knocked on the door. "Hello, sweetheart," she said in a soft voice. "It's Carol. The lady who said hello the other day. May I come in?" Silence. Carol waited. She wasn't going to force anything. She knew that earning the trust of a frightened child took time. Time and patience. "I'm right here outside," Carol said, sitting on the floor next to the door. "If you want to talk, I'm here, and if you don't want to, that's okay too. I just want you to know, you're not alone." Several minutes passed. Carol began to hum a song, a lullaby her mother used to sing to her when she was a child, a soft, ancient melody, full of love. The door opened a crack. An eye appeared in the opening, a brown eye, still wet with tears. "You sing pretty," Lily said in a barely audible voice. Carol smiled. "My mother taught it to me. She said songs have magic, that they can chase away fears." Lily opened the door a little more. "My mommy used to sing too, before." Carol nodded gently. "Would you like to tell me about her?" Lily hesitated. She glanced toward the stairs, checking that no one was coming. Then she opened the door completely and motioned for Carol to come in. Lily's room was large, filled with expensive toys that looked like they'd never been touched. There was a huge bed with pink sheets, a desk with crayons scattered about, and on the wall, photos of Lily with her mother, photos of happy days, days that no longer existed. Lily sat on her bed and hugged her teddy bear. Carol sat on the floor, facing her, to be at her level. "What's your bear's name?" Carol asked. "Teddy. My mommy gave him to me when I was born." "He's very handsome. You take good care of him." Lily nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "Priscilla says I have to throw him away. She says I'm too old for teddy bears. She says girls who have bears are crybabies." Carol felt her chest tighten with rage, but she kept her expression calm. "You know what? I'm 64 years old and I still keep a doll my mother gave me. I have it in my house, in my room, and I'm not ashamed." Lily looked at her in surprise. "Really?" "Really. Things that are given to us by the people we love are treasures, no matter how old we get. We never have to throw them away." Lily hugged Teddy tighter. "Priscilla doesn't understand that. Priscilla doesn't understand anything." Carol moved a little closer. "Lily, can I ask you something?" The girl nodded. "Why do you cry so much?" Lily looked down. Her little hands squeezed Teddy's fur until her knuckles turned white. "I can't say." "Why not?" "Because if I say, bad things happen." "What bad things?" Lily shook her head. "I can't," Priscilla said. "She said if I tell, my daddy will send me to a place where bad children go and I'll never see anyone again." Carol felt her heart break. "Lily, look at me." The girl raised her eyes. "Your daddy loves you. He would never send you anywhere. What Priscilla told you is a lie. Priscilla says my daddy believes her more, that I'm just a little girl and no one believes little girls." Carol extended her hand and placed it gently on Lily's. "I believe you, and I'm going to make your daddy believe you too. I promise you." Lily looked at her with eyes full of hope and fear at the same time. "You can't. Priscilla is very clever. She always wins." "It's not always the clever ones who win," Carol said in a firm voice. "Sometimes it's the ones who have the truth on their side. And the truth is on your side, sweetheart." Lily didn't say anything, but for the first time since Carol had met her, she saw something different in her eyes. A small flicker, a spark of hope. Carol knew she had to act carefully. If Priscilla found out about this conversation, things could get even worse for Lily. But she also knew she had accomplished something important. She had made contact. She had planted a seed of trust. Now she had to nurture it. During the following days, Carol looked for moments to be near Lily without raising suspicion. When Brenda was distracted, Carol would smile at the girl. She'd leave little notes with heart drawings hidden among Lily's toys. She'd hum songs as she walked past the hallway near Lily's room, and Lily began to respond. First, there were glances, fleeting little smiles. Then, there were gestures, a wave of the hand when no one was looking, a soft giggle when Carol made a funny face, and finally, words. One afternoon, Lily came down to the kitchen while Carol was cleaning. Brenda had gone to the bathroom. They had only a few minutes. "Aunt Carol," Lily whispered, "I have to show you something." "What is it, sweetie?" Lily pulled something from her pocket. It was a small notebook, about the size of her palm. "I write down everything Priscilla tells me here. Everything bad. I started it because you said the truth matters, and I want you to know the truth." Carol took the notebook with trembling hands. The pages were filled with phrases written in Lily's childlike handwriting. Some words were misspelled, but the message was clear. "Priscilla said I'm a bother. Priscilla said she wishes I had died instead of Mommy. Priscilla pinched me, but didn't leave a mark. Priscilla said, if I cry, Daddy won't love me." Carol felt bile rising in her throat. "Lily, this is very important. Can I keep this?" Lily nodded. "But don't let Priscilla see it. If she sees it, she'll punish me. No one will see this except the people who are going to help you. I promise." Lily heard footsteps approaching. Brenda was coming back. "I have to go," Lily said quickly. "But there's more. There's something in Priscilla's room. Something she's hiding. Something bad." "What is it?" "I don't know what it is, but she keeps it in a box in her closet. She always locks it. Once I saw her open it, and inside, there were papers. and a small bottle. Before Carol could ask more, Lily ran towards the stairs. Brenda walked into the kitchen a second later. "What was the child doing down here?" she asked suspiciously. "She came to get water," Carol lied, without losing her cool. "She's gone now." Brenda looked at her distrustfully, but didn't say anything. Carol tucked Lily's notebook into her apron and continued cleaning. Her mind was racing. A locked box, papers, a small bottle. What could it be? That night, Carol couldn't sleep. She sat on her bed, reading Lily's notebook over and over. Each phrase made her cry. Each word was a dagger to her heart. Priscilla was a monster. That was clear. But knowing she was a monster and proving it were two different things. The notebook was important, but a good lawyer could say that Lily had made it all up, that she was a child jealous of her father's new wife, that she was lying for attention. Carol needed more. She needed to know what was in that box. The next day, Carol arrived at the estate with a plan. She knew that Priscilla went to the spa on Fridays. She knew that Brenda asked for permission to leave early, and she knew that Edward never arrived before 9 at night. She had a window of time, small, but enough. Friday arrived. Priscilla left at 2 in the afternoon, perfumed and smiling, suspecting nothing. Brenda left at 3, after leaving Lily watching television in the living room. Edward called to say he would be late, as always. Carol looked at Lily. "Sweetie, I need you to do something very important. I need you to stay here, watching television, and if you hear someone coming, I need you to cough very loudly. Can you do that?" Lily looked at her with wide eyes. "Are you going to look for the box?" Carol nodded. "It might be dangerous. Aunt Carol, if Priscilla catches you, she won't catch me. But I need your help. You're my guardian." "Okay." Lily nodded solemnly. "I'm going to cough very, very loudly. Priscilla won't catch you." Carol went upstairs, her heart pounding so hard she felt it would explode. Priscilla and Edward's room was the largest in the estate. Carol had cleaned it dozens of times. She knew every corner, every piece of furniture, every space. She went straight to Priscilla's closet. It was a huge walk-in closet, full of designer clothes, brand-name shoes, handbags that cost more than Carol earned in a year. But Carol wasn't there to admire the luxury. She was looking for something. The box. She found it on the highest shelf, hidden behind some shoe boxes. It was a metal box, about the size of a shoebox, with a small padlock. Carol carefully took it down. The padlock was simple, one of those cheap ones they sell at any hardware store. Carol had opened padlocks like that before, in another life, when her husband came home drunk and lost the keys. She took a hairpin from her hair and worked on the padlock. 30 seconds later, it opened. What she found inside left her frozen. There were several envelopes with documents. Carol opened them one by one. The first contained the original will of Evelyn, Lily's mother. Carol read it quickly. Evelyn had left a specific clause, if anything happened to her. The money from her family, a fortune that Edward didn't even know existed, would go directly to Lily. Not to Edward, to Lily. Priscilla knew this. That's why she hated Lily. Because as long as Lily existed, Priscilla could never touch that money. The second envelope contained pharmacy receipts. Receipts for medications that Carol didn't recognize. But there was a word that sounded familiar. Sedatives. The third envelope was the worst. It was a handwritten letter. The handwriting was Priscilla's. Carol read it with growing horror. The letter was for someone named Mark. In it, Priscilla talked about her plan. She said she was tired of waiting. That Lily was a problem that had to disappear. That the sedatives were working. That the girl was sleeping more and more. That soon she would need psychiatric hospitalization. And once Lily was locked away in an asylum, Priscilla could convince Edward that custody should pass to the state. And then, Evelyn's money would have no direct heir. And then, Edward would be the sole owner. And then, Priscilla would have everything. Carol had to hold on to the shelf to keep from falling. It wasn't just psychological abuse. Priscilla was drugging Lily. She was trying to make her look crazy to lock her in an asylum. She was planning to steal the inheritance of a 6-year-old girl. This was a crime. This was attempted murder, covered up. Carol took pictures of each document with her old phone. She took pictures of the bottle of sedatives, which was indeed in the box, half empty. She took pictures of the letter. She took pictures of everything. Then, with trembling hands, she put everything back in its place, closed the box, put it back on the shelf, and left the room. With trembling legs, Carol descended the stairs. Lily was waiting for her in the living room. "Did you find something?" Carol nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. I found the truth. And now I'm going to make sure everyone sees it." That night, Carol didn't go home. She stayed until Priscilla returned, acting normal, cleaning as if nothing had happened. She said goodbye at 6, as always, walked to the bus stop, as always. But instead of going home, she went to the police station. She asked to speak with someone about a case of child abuse. They made her wait for 3 hours. When they finally saw her, they told her she needed evidence, that a report without proof was useless, that she should come back when she had something concrete. Carol showed them the photos, the officer assisting her. His expression changed. "Where did you get this?" "From the estate where I work. The owner's wife is drugging her stepdaughter. She wants to make her look insane, to steal her inheritance." The officer read the letter. "This is serious," he said finally. "But we need more than photos. We need the original documents, and we need a judge to authorize an investigation." "And how long will that take?" "Weeks, maybe months." Carol felt the world closing in on her. "Lily doesn't have months. That woman is drugging her now. Every day that passes is another day of poison in her body." The officer looked at her with something akin to compassion. "Ma'am, I understand your urgency, but the system has its own pace, and the best I can do is expedite the process. But I can't promise you anything." Carol left the police station, her heart broken. The system, always the system, slow, bureaucratic, indifferent. While they filled out forms, Lily was still being drugged. While they waited for authorizations, Lily was still having nightmares. While they followed their protocols, a 6-year-old girl was being destroyed. No, see, Carol wasn't going to wait. If the system wouldn't protect Lily, she would, the next day. Carol arrived at the mansion with a mission. She had to find a way to talk to Edward, directly, without Priscilla, without Brenda, just her and Lily's father. But that was practically impossible. Edward left early, returned late, and when he was home, Priscilla was always by his side. It was as if she were watching him, as if she knew that any crack in her control could be fatal. Carol observed, thought, planned, and then the opportunity came in the most unexpected way. It was Wednesday afternoon. Carol was cleaning the living room when she heard an argument upstairs. The voices were Priscilla's and Edward's. "I don't understand why you have to travel right now," Priscilla said, her voice irritated. "It's an emergency," Edward responded. "The Reno project is about to collapse. If I don't go personally we lose millions. But it's our 6-month anniversary we'll celebrate when I get back. It's only 3 days." 3 days. Carol felt her heart skip a beat. 3 days with Edward gone meant that Priscilla would let her guard down. It meant that Carol could observe with more freedom. And maybe, just maybe, it meant an opportunity to contact Edward when he was alone, far from his wife's influence. Edward left that same night. Priscilla saw him off with a kiss at the door. acting like the perfect wife. But the moment the car disappeared down the driveway, her smile vanished. She turned to Brenda. Finally, 3 days without having to act. Brenda smiled. "What do you want to do, ma'am?" "I want to go to the spa and shopping and have dinner with my girlfriends. 3 days of freedom." And the girl. Let her stay in her room. Give her an extra dose of the medicine so she sleeps longer. I don't want to hear her crying. Carol, who was cleaning a vase in the corner, pretended not to hear. But every word was etched in her memory. Extra medicine. So she sleeps longer. Priscilla was increasing the dose of sedatives. Carol felt panic. She had to act. She had to act now. That night, when everyone had gone to sleep, Carol did something she had never done before. She stayed in the estate. She waited until 11 o'clock at night. Priscilla had gone out to dinner with friends. Brenda had gone to her room in the service wing. Lily was sleeping in her room, probably sedated. Carol climbed the stairs silently. She went to Lily's room. She opened the door carefully. The girl was in bed, just motionless. She was breathing, but her breathing was too slow, too deep. It wasn't the normal sleep of a child. It was drug-induced sleep. Carol approached, touched Lily's forehead. It was cold. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What are they doing to you, sweetheart?" She looked around. On the nightstand there was a glass of water. She smelled it. There was something in it. Something that shouldn't be there. She took the glass. She put it in her bag. It was evidence. Then, with all the pain in her heart, she left the room. She couldn't do anything that night. She couldn't wake Lily up. She couldn't take her anywhere. If she did, Priscilla would call the police, and Carol would be arrested for kidnapping. She would lose all credibility, and Lily would be even more unprotected. She had to be smart. She had to wait for the right moment. But every moment she waited, Lily continued to be poisoned. Carol didn't sleep that night. She stayed in a dark corner of the garden, watching the estate, praying that the girl would survive until she could save her. The next day, Carol got the phone number for Edward's office. She called him at 9 in the morning from a payphone. "Rodriguez Construction." "Good morning," the secretary answered. "I need to speak with Mr. Edward Rodriguez. It's urgent." "Mr. Rodriguez is in a meeting. Can I take a message?" "Tell him Carol called, the housekeeper from his estate. Tell him it's about his daughter. Tell him it's a matter of life and death." There was a silence. "Ma'am, those kinds of messages. Please, just tell him that. If he doesn't call me back, he's going to regret it for the rest of his life." Something in Carol's voice must have convinced the secretary, because 10 minutes later, the old payphone rang. "Carol, this is Edward. What's wrong with Lily?" "Mr. Edward, I need to see you. In person. Without Priscilla. It's very important." Silence. "What is this about?" "I can't tell you over the phone, but it has to do with your daughter's health, with her life." Another silence. Longer this time. "I'm in Reno, as I can't come back until Friday. Mr. Edward, with all due respect, is if you wait until Friday, it may be too late." Edward's voice changed. There was something in it. Fear? Doubt? Carol couldn't be sure. "Tell me what's going on." "Your wife is drugging Lily. She's been putting sedatives in Lily's food. She's got proof locked away in a metal box in her closet. There's even a letter detailing her entire plan. She wants to make Lily seem mentally unstable so she can lock her away in a psychiatric hospital and inherit Evelyn's fortune. That's insane. Priscilla loves Lily. Mr. Edward, with all due respect, you don't see what happens in your own home because you're never there. Priscilla is a completely different person when you're not around. She mistreats Lily. She threatens her. She tells her you'll abandon her if she cries. She even told her that her mother's death was Lily's fault." Another silence. This one lasted almost a full minute. How do I know you're not just making this up? Because I have proof. Photos of the documents, drawings Lily made showing the abuse, a notebook where she wrote down everything Priscilla says to her, and a glass with traces of sedatives that I took from her room last night. Edward took a deep breath. Why didn't you go to the police? I did. They told me the process takes weeks, maybe even months. Lily doesn't have that kind of time. Every day that passes, your wife gives her more drugs, and if it continues like this, she's going to... Carol couldn't finish the sentence, but Edward understood. I'm taking the first flight back. Mr. Edward, if you come back early, Priscilla will suspect something and she'll hide the evidence. You need to act like nothing's wrong. Then what do you suggest? Come back on Friday as planned. But go straight to your estate or not to the office. Don't let Priscilla know you're coming. And when you get there, go to her closet and look for a metal box on the top shelf. Everything is in there. And what if I don't find anything? You will find it. But if you need more proof, just look at your daughter. Look into her eyes. See how she trembles when Priscilla enters the room. See how she sleeps 12, 13 hours straight without waking up. No 6-year-old girl sleeps like that naturally. Silence. Finally, Edward spoke. I'm going to do what you say. But if this is some kind of trap, and it's not a trap, I just want Lily to be safe, that's all I want. Carol hung up. Her hands were trembling. She'd taken the first step. Now everything depended on Edward, and on Priscilla not suspecting anything until Friday. The next 2 days were the longest of Carol's life. She worked as always, cleaned as always, greeted Priscilla with the same deference as always. She didn't let on for even a second that anything had changed, but inside she was dying of fear. Priscilla seemed to be in excellent spirits. She spent most of her time away from the estate, enjoying Edward's absence, buying new clothes, getting beauty treatments, dining at expensive restaurants. And meanwhile, Lily remained asleep. Carol went up to check on her whenever she could. The little girl spent most of the day in bed with her eyes closed, breathing that slow, unnatural breath that Carol had learned to recognize. Every time she saw her like that, Carol felt something break inside her. Hang on, little one, she whispered as she stroked her hair. Just 2 more days. Just 2 more days, and it will all be over. Lily didn't respond. She was too drugged to hear. On Thursday night, something changed. Carol was cleaning downstairs when she heard shouting from upstairs. It was Priscilla. She ran up the stairs, her heart in her throat. Priscilla was in her room, in front of the open closet. She held the metal box in her hands. The box was open, and Priscilla was staring at her with eyes of fury. "You!" she hissed when she saw Carol in the doorway. "It was you!" Carol felt the ground open beneath her feet. "I don't know what you're talking about, ma'am. Liar. Someone opened my box. Someone touched my things, and the only person who has access to this room is you." Brenda appeared behind Carol. "What's wrong, ma'am? Search her things, now." Carol felt panic wash over her, the photos, the glass with sedatives, Lily's notebook. Everything was in her purse. If Brenda found those things, everything was lost. But then something unexpected happened. Lily appeared in the doorway of her room. She was pale, trembling, but awake. "I did it," she said in a weak but clear voice. Priscilla turned around. "What did you say?" "I opened the box. I wanted to see what you had inside." Priscilla walked towards Lily with long, threatening steps. "You opened my box. You touched my things?" Lily nodded, trembling but not backing down. "I saw the papers. I saw the letter. I read what it said." Priscilla stopped dead in her tracks. Her face turned white. "What? What exactly did you read?" Lily looked her straight in the eyes, and in that moment, Carol saw something she hadn't seen before. Strength, determination, the spirit of a little girl who had decided to stop being afraid. "I read that you want to make me look crazy, that you give me medicine to make me sleep, that you want to take away my mommy's inheritance." Priscilla took a step back. That's not true. You don't understand. I understand everything. And my daddy is going to understand too when I tell him." Priscilla changed. In a second, she went from frightened to furious. Your daddy won't believe you. No one will believe you. You're just a lying, crying little girl. And when I tell him what you just did, he's going to send you to boarding school, a place where they lock up bad girls. Lily trembled, but she didn't back down. Aunt Carol will believe me. She knows the truth. Priscilla looked at Carol with pure hatred. The cleaning lady. Of course. She's the one who put these ideas in your head. She walked towards Carol. You're fired. Get out of my house, now! Carol didn't move. I'm not leaving without Lily. Priscilla laughed. A cold, cruel laugh. You have no rights over that girl, and she's my husband's daughter. And I'm the lady of this house. If you don't leave in the next 30 seconds, I'm calling the police and accusing you of attempted kidnapping. Carol looked at Lily. The little girl was looking at her with eyes full of fear. And then a sound was heard. The front door opened, footsteps on the stairs, and a voice that made Priscilla freeze. No one is calling anyone. It was Edward. He was standing in the doorway of the room. His face was pale. His eyes were red, and in his hands he carried a folder. Edward, Priscilla said in a trembling voice, I thought you were coming back tomorrow. I changed my plans. I took the first flight after receiving a very interesting call. He looked at Carol, then he looked at Lily, and finally, he looked at Priscilla. Do you know who called me? Priscilla shook her head. Your friend Mark. The one from the letter. It turns out he decided he no longer wanted to be your accomplice. Priscilla turned even paler. I don't know what you're talking about. Edward opened the folder. Mark recorded all your calls. He saved all your messages. And when she found out I was one of the wealthiest men in the city, she decided it would pay better to sell me the information than to stick to your plan. He pulled out some papers. I have here transcripts of your calls, where you talk about drugging my daughter, where you talk about locking her away in a mental institution, where you talk about taking Evelyn's inheritance. Priscilla started to tremble. Edward, I can explain. There's nothing to explain. Edward walked toward Lily. He knelt in front of her. He took her hands. Honey, forgive me. I didn't see what was happening. I was so blind. Lily didn't say anything. She just threw herself into his arms and started to cry. But this time, it wasn't the usual silent crying. It was a liberating cry, a cry of relief. Daddy, she murmured between sobs. I was so scared. I know, Princess. I know, but it's over now. No one's going to hurt you anymore. Priscilla took a step toward them. Edward, please. I love you. This was all a misunderstanding. Edward stood up. He looked at Priscilla with a contempt that Carol had never seen in a human being before. You don't know what love is. You only know how to lie, manipulate, and destroy. And you almost destroyed my daughter. He took out his phone. The police will be here in 10 minutes. You have that time to collect your things and get out of my house. If you're still here when they arrive, they're going to arrest you. Priscilla glared at him with hatred. You're not going to get away with this. I have lawyers. I have contacts. I'm going to destroy you. Edward smiled coldly. Try it. I have more money, better lawyers. And above all, I have the truth. We'll see who wins. Priscilla looked at Brenda. Let's go. The two women ran down the stairs. Carol heard the front door open and slam shut. They were gone. Edward looked at Carol. Thank you, he said with a broken voice. If it weren't for you... You don't have to thank me, Mr. Edward. I just did what any decent person would have done. No. Any person wouldn't have risked their job, their safety. Everything. For a little girl they didn't even know. You're special, Carol. And I'll never forget what you did for my daughter. Lily let go of her father and ran towards Carol. Aunt Carol, she cried, and hugged her with all the strength of her little arms. Carol hugged her back, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like the world made sense. She knew there was still much to be done. Police, lawyers, medical exams for Lily, a long recovery process. But the worst was over. Lily was safe, and that was all that mattered. The weeks that followed were intense. The police arrived that night and took statements from everyone. Carol showed them the photos, Lily's notebook, the drawings. Edward handed over the folder with Marco's transcripts. The glass with traces of sedatives was sent to a lab for analysis. The results confirmed everything. Lily had been drugged with sedatives, in doses that could have caused permanent damage to her brain if it had continued. The doctor who examined her said that they arrived just in time. A few more weeks and the consequences would have been irreversible. Priscilla was arrested 3 days later at the airport, trying to flee the country. Brenda was detained as an accomplice. Marco, Priscilla's lover and supposed ally in her plan, had decided to betray her when he saw that Edward could pay him more than she could. The trial lasted 6 months. Carol had to testify. It was the hardest part, sitting in front of Priscilla, looking her in the eye, and telling everything she had seen. But she did it. For Lily. For all the little girls who suffer in silence. Lily also had to testify. It was in a special room, adapted for minors, with a psychologist by her side. Carol waited outside, and when Lily came out, she ran into her arms. "I did it, Aunt Carol," she said with a trembling voice. "I told everything. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. You're the bravest little girl I know." The verdict was guilty on all charges. Priscilla was sentenced to 15 years in prison for attempted murder, administering harmful substances to a minor, child abuse and fraud. Brenda received 5 years as an accomplice. When the judge read the sentence, Carol felt an enormous weight lift from her shoulders. Justice had been served, but the story didn't end there. Edward was destroyed. Guilt consumed him. He had been so blind, so absent, that his own daughter had suffered months of abuse under his roof. Without him noticing, he sought help. He started therapy. And most importantly, he started to be present. He stopped working 15 hours a day. He delegated responsibilities at the company. He reduced his travels to the bare minimum because he had finally understood that no business, no amount of money, was worth more than his daughter. Lily also started therapy. The first few months were difficult. She had nightmares. She couldn't sleep alone. She trembled every time she heard heels on the floor. The trauma that Priscilla had caused wouldn't disappear overnight, but little by little, day by day. Lily started to heal, and Carol was there for every step of the way. Edward had asked her to stay at the estate, not as a cleaner but as Lily's official caretaker. He had tripled her salary. He had given her a room in the house. He had offered her everything he could offer. But for Carol, none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was being there for Lily. The months passed. Lily started to smile again. First they were small, timid smiles, as if she were afraid someone would punish her for being happy. But little by little, they grew bigger, more frequent, more natural. One day, Carol heard her singing. She was in her room, playing with her dolls, and singing a song that her mother had taught her. Her voice was sweet, clear, full of life. Carol stood at the door, listening, with tears rolling down her cheeks. It was the first time Lily had sung since her mother's death. The recovery wasn't linear. There were good days and bad days. There were setbacks and progress. There were nights of nightmares and mornings of hope, but every day, Lily was a little better, and Carol was there for every moment. She took her to the park. She helped her with her homework. She made her favorite food. She read her stories before bed. She hummed lullabies when she was scared. Everything that Priscilla had taken away, Carol gave back to her. The love, the security, the trust, the joy of being a child. A year after the trial, Lily turned 7. Edward threw a party. He invited her classmates from school, hired clowns and games, bought a huge 3-tiered cake. But the most important gift didn't come in a box. "Lily," Edward announced, standing before all the guests. "I have something to tell you, and something very special." Lily looked at him with curiosity. "A few months ago, I began a legal process, and today, finally, I received the answer." He took a paper from his pocket. "This document states that As of today, Aunt Carol is officially part of our family. I've adopted her as my mother. Legally, she is now your grandmother." Lily remained silent for a moment. Then she looked at Carol, her eyes brimming with tears. "Is it true, Aunt Carol? Are you really my grandmother now?" Carol nodded, unable to speak through her emotion. Lily ran to her and hugged her with all the strength of her small body. "I love you, Grandma Carol. I love you so much. And I love you, my darling. I love you too." The guests applauded. Some were crying. Edward smiled, and for the first time in a long time, Carol looked around. The estate, which had once been a place of pain, was now filled with laughter, with music, with children playing. Priscilla's ghost had been exorcised. The darkness had given way to the light, and at the center of it all was Lily, the little girl who had been mistreated, drugged, almost destroyed. The little girl who was now smiling, singing, playing like any 7-year-old should. The little girl who had reclaimed her childhood. Carol thought of her daughter, Luciana, how she hadn't been able to save her, how she had arrived too late. But this time, it was different. This time, she had acted. She had risked everything. She had fought against a system that ignored her, against a powerful woman who despised her, against a world that treated cleaning ladies like invisible beings. And she had won, not for herself, but for Lily. For all the Lilies in the world who suffer in silence. For all the little girls who need someone to see them. That night, after the guests had left and Lily had fallen asleep, Carol went out into the garden. She looked at the stars, and for the first time in many years, she felt peace. "Luciana," she whispered to the sky, "I couldn't save you, but I saved Lily. I hope that counts for something." A shooting star streaked across the sky. Carol smiled. It was the answer she needed. 5 years later, Lily was 11 years old. She was a happy, intelligent, vibrant girl. She got good grades in school. She had friends. She played soccer on the school team. She dreamed of being a veterinarian when she grew up. The trauma hadn't completely disappeared. She still had therapy once a month. She still had difficult days. She still remembered, but she had learned to live with it. And more importantly, she had learned that the past didn't define her future. Carol was 69 years old. Her hair was completely white now, and her knees protested when she climbed the stairs. But she was still there at the estate, taking care of her granddaughter, because that's what Lily was now. Her granddaughter, not by blood, but by heart. Edward had found love again. A woman named, ironically, Carol, who worked in a child protection organization. They had met during Priscilla's trial and had started dating 2 years later. This time, Edward had taken his time. He had introduced Carol to Lily slowly. He had let the relationship develop naturally. He had learned from his mistakes. And Lily had accepted her, not as a mother. That was impossible. Evelyn would always be her mom, but as a friend, as someone who loved her, as part of her family. One day, Lily came home from school with an assignment. "Grandma Carol," she said, sitting next to her in the garden, "the teacher asked us to write about the person we admire most. And who are you going to choose?" Lily looked at her with those brown eyes that Carol knew so well. "You, obviously." Carol laughed. "Me? Why me?" "I'm just an old cleaning lady." Lily shook her head. "You're not just that, you're the person who saved me. When everyone else looked the other way. You saw me. When nobody believed me, you believed me. When I was alone, you gave me a family." Lily took her hands. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come into my life, Grandma. But I know I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be the person I am. I wouldn't have the life I have." Her eyes filled with tears. And that's why you're the person I admire most in the world." Carol hugged her granddaughter, and as she hugged her, she thought of the long road they had traveled together. She thought of the little girl crying silently, hugging a teddy bear in a dark room. She thought of the woman who now dreamed of being a veterinarian and played soccer and had friends and laughed with her whole body. She thought of everything she had risked to get here, and she knew she would do it again, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, because that's what we do for the people we love. We protect them, we save them, we help them to flourish. And that was exactly what Lily had done. She had flourished. Lily went off to write her essay. Carol stayed in the garden, watching the sunset. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky with oranges and reds and purples. It was beautiful. As beautiful as the life they now had. Carol closed her eyes and smiled, because she knew, with absolute certainty, that it had all been worth it. Every risk, every fear, every tear. It had all been worth it. Because Lily was safe and Lily was happy, and that in the end was all that mattered.